Hello, Fright fans. Welcome to my cozy cottage. Let Zara recall a chilling story. Based on real events, woven with fictional characters, this tale will take you deep into the quiet towns of Eldermire and Ravensbrook. These are places where faith once thrived, but darkness took root. This is the story of Daniel Henshaw, a man whose hatred left a trail of terror and blood. Pour yourself a warming drink and let Zara chill your bones.
The air in Eldermere whispered with an old familiar stillness. Ravensbrook, too, slept under a veneer of serenity, its church bells tolling faintly against a sky heavy with clouds. These were places where doors were left unlocked, and neighbours shed a smile over garden hedges. But beneath the quiet veneer, something malevolent stirred, an unseen shadow that would soon descend, leaving devastation in its wake. Daniel Henshaw was no ordinary man. To those who knew him, his distant gaze and curt speech masked a deeper, simmering rage, but his soul was fractured. Childhood whispers of abuse twisted into an obsession with revenge, a war against the faith he once trusted. In Henshaw's mind, religion wasn't salvation. It was a target. Daniel scribbled his thoughts on scraps of paper, venomous proclamations against religious fools. The image of the Archbishop of Canterbury flickered in his mind, a trophy he longed to claim. His hatred was a fire, consuming every shred of restraint. Henshaw's obsessions weren't idle thoughts. They were promises. A drifter, Daniel Henshaw never stayed in one place for long. He drifted like a leaf on a restless wind from the town to town, pub to pub. His pockets were usually empty, but his charm was enough to find a soft-hearted soul willing to lend a few pounds. Gambling was his vice, fishing his escape. He'd sit by the riverbanks for hours, watching the line, lost in thoughts darker than the water beneath him. A desperate gambler, luck was never on Henshaw's side, but that didn't stop him. Horse races he chased with feverish hope. When his luck soured, as it always did, he turned to manipulation. A sympathetic vicar here, a lonely widow there, he knew exactly what to say, how to look desperate without seeming dangerous. But the kindness of strangers could only stretch so far, and Henshaw's needs always outweighed their patience. Daniel Henshaw arrived in Eldermire that summer, worn boots and a weary smile painting him as a man down on his luck. Edith Walker, ever kind-hearted, took notice. She welcomed him with tea and scripture, eager to share her faith. Henshaw played along, nodding at sermons and offering polite gratitude. To Edith, he was a soul in need. To him, she was an easy mark. As summer stretched on, so did his quiet deception, each borrowed pound feeding his habits, each smile hiding his disdain. January's frost clung to the hedgerows, and Edith was alone in her cottage, a walking stick resting by her chair. When the intruder crept through the shadows, his breath misting in the cold air, she never saw him coming. The blow struck her like a thunderclap, her body crumpling onto the floor. The knife glinted in the dim light, descending 4 times, each thrust deliberate, each motion calculated. Leaving Eldermere unseen, Henshaw hitched a lift from an unsuspecting lorry driver a few hours later. Arriving in the market town of Ravensbrook under a grey sky, Daniel stepped slowly to the town centre, his eyes ever watchful. Reverend Michael Langley, always welcoming, greeted Henshaw outside the church with a firm handshake and a warm smile. Henshaw spoke of hardship, of searching for peace, and the Reverend listened with quiet compassion. He offered food, shelter and scripture, unaware of the darkness behind Henshaw's eyes. To the Reverend, he was a man seeking redemption. To Henshaw, he was just another mark. Daniel Henshaw's hatred had simmered for years, a slow-burning fire fueled by memories he could never escape. Religion to him was a lie wrapped in false kindness, a hollow promise that had failed him time and time again. Every sermon he'd endured as a child, every prayer whispered in desperation, all led to pain. The church had turned a blind eye to his suffering, offering empty words instead of salvation. And in Reverend Michael Langley, Daniel saw not a man of faith, but a symbol of everything he despised. When he first arrived in Ravensbrook, Henshaw had no intention of staying long, but Langley's kindness, his unwavering belief in goodness, grated on him in ways he couldn't ignore. The Reverend welcomed him with open arms, offering meals, a place to rest, and gentle encouragement to join the congregation. Henshaw smiled, nodded, and accepted it all but inside. His rage festered. He saw Langley as weak, naive, another fool blinded by faith. Worse still, the Reverend's kindness reminded him of the past, of those who had once claimed to care for him, only to abandon him when he needed them most. As the weeks passed, Henshaw's contempt grew into obsession. He watched Langley closely, memorizing his routines, his gentle words to the parishioners, his unwavering dedication to the church. Every sermon, every act of charity felt like a personal insult, proof that Langley lived in a world of illusion, oblivious to the harsh realities Henshaw had endured. The Reverend spoke of forgiveness, but Daniel had none to give. He despised the way Langley looked at him, as if he were a lost sheep waiting to be saved. Henshaw didn't need saving. He needed revenge. His thoughts darkened with each passing day, his hatred sharpening into something tangible. Langley had to pay not just for his kindness, but for everything he represented. The Reverend's unwavering faith, his belief in second chances, sickened Henshaw. In his mind, Langley was a fraud, just like all the others who had preached salvation but never delivered it. Killing him wouldn't just be an act of violence, it would be a statement, a reckoning against the faith that had failed him. The decision came one cold February night, standing outside the rectory in the shadows. He watched Langley through the window, reading by the fire, unaware of the storm brewing outside. In that moment, Henshaw felt powerful. Taking Langley's life would prove that faith was meaningless, that kindness was weakness, that in the end, only darkness prevailed. He knew his war against faith had truly begun. 6 weeks later, Reverend Michael Langley opened his rectory door to the man who would end his life. The sanctity of the holy home was shattered in seconds. Henshaw's blade found its mark 7 times, each wound stealing more of the vicar's strength. As Rev Langley whispered, "I'm dying," Henshaw's reply was as cold as the winter night. "Hurry up and die." The crime scenes were tableaux of horror. At Edith Walker's cottage, her body lay unnaturally posed, a silent scream etched into her features, the knife used to end her life, wedged in her neck. At the rectory, the air was heavy with the scent of death, the body surrounded by grotesque symbols of desecration. Detectives pieced together the story like shards of broken glass. Detectives worked tirelessly, analysing CCTV footage and forensic evidence. A crucial lead emerged from a witness who recalled a stranger lurking near the rectory. Surveillance teams tracked Henshaw to a dingy flat in a neighbouring town. In the early hours, armed officers stormed the building, finding him surrounded by relics of his crimes. Henshaw was taken into custody without resistance. The courtroom was heavy with silence, save for the cold recounting of Henshaw's deeds. The jury listened to the grim details, the stolen lives, the desecration of sacred spaces, and Henshaw's brazen contempt for the sanctity of life. He denied the murder of Edith outright, but admitted the murder of Reverend Langley, justifying his actions with hatred of the church. The verdict was inevitable. 2 whole life terms for a man devoid of remorse. Life behind bars Henshaw is one of the few men who will never be freed. Locked behind the iron gates of HMP Coldwater, Henshaw became a prisoner of his own rage. The sterile walls of his cell were far from the chaos he craved, and the voices of authority echoed like a hymn he despised. Here, the man who sought to destroy faith was forced to confront his own void, an existence devoid of meaning. On a quiet morning, 10 years into his indefinite sentence, the news broke. Daniel Henshaw was dead. The Hausen Wise would follow, a routine investigation into the death of a man who caused so much suffering. But his passing was met with muted relief, a collective exhale from those haunted by his crimes.
Reflections on Evil. Daniel Henshaw's legacy was one of terror, his name forever etched into the annals of infamy. But what drives a man to such darkness? Was it trauma, madness, or pure malevolence? The towns of Eldermire and Ravensbrook moved forward. Though scars remained, the church bells tolled once more. They carried not just the weight of grief, but hope and reassurance. Even in the quietest of places, the shadows can be long. A place evil can walk unnoticed.